From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Hi, it's Charlie Matos, and welcome to a special episode of our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. We would preview the 5,000th Saturday night broadcast of the Grand Ole Opry from the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. It would be Friday, October the 29th, and we would be joined by longtime Opry stars John Conlee, Jeannie Seely, Whisperin' Bill Anderson, and the vice president and executive producer of the Opry, Dan Rogers. Bill Cody and Kelly Sutton were on the stage of the Opry House. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast.
Coffee, Country, and Cody.
Well, good morning from the stage of the Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville, Tennessee, with Kelly Sutton and a guy who has spent 40 years of his life as a member of the Grand Ole Opry family, John Conlee, who was just here about 20 minutes ago doing Opry Country Classics.
It seems like it's been 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I wondered which of the dressing rooms that you slept in last night. Did
I started to just deck out on the couch in number 5, but I didn't. I went home, came back.
You look refreshed.
I do. I'm ready to go.
All right.
So take us back to John Conlee's debut and then your subsequent membership, John, as a part of this rich history.
Well, I was inducted by the great Porter Wagoner.
Yeah.
Porter inducted me as a member of the Opry on February 7th, 1981. My first guest appearance, I was introduced by the great Jim Ed Brown, who got my name wrong.
And you were called?
John Thomas Conlee. He got me confused with Earl.
Because Earl Thomas Conlee, John Conlee, and Con Hunley were all having hit records at the same time.
At the same time. We all started at about the same. And John Anderson comes into that mix as well. People ask me all the time now for Swingin', and they ask him for Rose-Colored Glasses. So the confusion factor has been incredible.
And it doesn't hurt that Terry Clark comes out and does her John Conlee imitation on the stage of the Opry from time to time, and Craig Morgan famously.
Exactly right. And the first time I met Terry, I've met her over the phone. She dropped into my office before she had anything going on. And her manager put her on the phone, and she did Rose-Colored Glasses over the phone to me. She does a good imitation. She does a great job.
When people ask you those songs, I know you were talking about, you got everybody together one time, famously.
On the stage of the Ryman.
On the stage
Ralph
of the
had always
Ryman.
wanted to do it. Earl didn't want to do it.
Didn't want to do it. Right.
Couldn't get it together. But somehow my relationship with Earl broke through, and so I had Earl Thomas Conlee, Con Hunley, and John Conlee all on the stage of the Ryman.
And they're asking you for other people to do, like if you're asked to do swinging, do you just break into it? Do you fight it anymore? Do you have to tell them that's not my song?
Yes, not my song. They don't believe you, of course. When somebody stops you on the street, would you do swing? I didn't do that song. Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I know you did.
No, I didn't. So, yeah, that happens all the time. But it happens to John as well. The difference was when we did the thing with you, we all just talked about our own music. What Ralph wanted to do, he wanted to and this is probably why Earl wouldn't do it. He wanted us to do each other's songs to increase the confusion factor.
Of course he did.
I guess,
He's the agent of chaos,
exactly
Ralph Henry.
Right, yeah.
That sounds
I was
about
up
right.
for it, but Earl wouldn't do it.
So radio was the first love for you,
It
or
was.
was music always there, and radio just kind of helped bide your time until
Music
it came along, that
music
opportunity?
was my hobby from the time of 8 or 9 years old on, but I didn't move to Nashville for music. I moved here because I got a job across town at another radio station. The only reason I moved here, and eventually that allowed me to turn the hobby of music into a career. After I got to know some of the folks on Music Row and so forth, and it just evolved. Still took 3 or 4 years, however.
You did news, didn't you, John?
I came here to do news. I did a 4-hour news block every morning for the first year that I was here.
And what station was that?
WLAC.
Okay.
And so I got to work on the music side with the great John R. and Hoss Allen, some of those great R&B guys who established rock and roll to a great degree. And then we changed the format of the station to music. And so I went to the FM and was playing Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra in the morning. And I spent 7 years out of my 9 at that station.
That's incredible. Was there a certain album that you remember listening to that you were playing at the time that really resonated with you and you thought, man, if I'm starting to do my own music, I love the way that this plays. I love the way that this sounds.
Ray Charles is my favorite all-time artist. I never got to play him on the radio with the format that I was involved in, but Ray is who I listen to still to this day more than probably anybody else. I've always loved the blues. I love R&B. I love gospel. I love a lot of different kinds of music, but I love the people who sell what they sing, the soul singers, and that's every format has just about has them. Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra in the MOR world, Merle and Lefty and George in country, and of course B.B. King and Ray and Aretha in the R&B world, among many others. But that's what I listen to. I can't listen to folks who don't sell what they sing.
Charlie Matos is back in the Magnolia Lobby studio this morning producing the show. Charlie, you were saying it's a bit of a reunion for you and John Conlee, speaking of WLAC.
I missed him by a few years, but that was my first radio home back in the day. I was there for 9 years, and until famously they wouldn't take back what they said.
What was it? What did they say?
They said, "You don't work here anymore."
No, it was even better than that. What did the guy say?
John, you'll appreciate this being an all-radio guy. They actually called me to the office and said, "We don't believe in beating around the bush. We're terminating your services immediately." I go, "Could you beat around the bush a little, maybe?"
Now you're in real radio.
Yeah,
That's right. Exactly. At least I got to resign.
You never got fired in
No,
radio?
I never got fired in radio.
Never worked in
That's right.
radio.
That's what they tell me. That's what they keep saying.
You make him
No.
miserable enough, he'll quit.
That's right.
That's exactly right. Oh, my goodness. Last night being here and doing the Opry Country Classics, what's that vibe like, and why do you like to be a part of that? I know last night was the last one.
And he was the spotlight artist.
You're the spotlight artist. What was that feeling like, and why do you enjoy that in particular different than being on the Grand Ole Opry?
It just has a different focus, and for everybody that's doing it, if you're the spotlight artist, as we were last night, we got to do a couple of more songs than we normally would on a normal Opry, and but you concentrate on the hits, and people don't do new music as a part of that, so it's all hits all the time on the classic show.
We're talking about 1981 and your membership here. Yesterday morning, I featured you with an old Curly Putman, Sonny Throckmorton song that you did, and I started looking at all those guys early in your career that you had hits on as writers who are now Songwriter Hall of Famers.
Right.
There was Harlan Howard, and there was Red Lane, and Curly and Sonny, and it was a who's who, John.
One of the greatest blessings of my whole career. I wouldn't start in any other time frame than the one I got to start in the 70s because of that. Thanks to my producer Bud Logan, he hung out with these people all of the time, and we got to put our hands on songs by these great songwriters who are gone now. They're not here anymore, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah, Sonny's still around in Texas. Sonny and I actually spent Christmas but it was Christmas before the pandemic, so 2019, I guess, and Whitey Schaefer's last days.
Right.
But we got to spend Christmas at Whitey's house. That was a tradition in my life for 2 decades, probably.
That's
Whitey's
great.
Christmas get together, and Sonny came in from Texas.
I'm sure you had a blast.
Oh, absolutely.
Pudding.
A lot of stories came out of those Christmas parties.
There you go.
A lot of stories. Speaking of stories, tell us a story about being here February 7th, 1981. What was that night like for you?
Yeah, it was a great night. A family, of course, were gathered out front to witness it, my folks, my parents, and so forth. But I must say that in 1981, we didn't make the big deal out of a new induction that we do now. Right. And I'm glad we do that now. We have, you have cake backstage now. We didn't have a cake backstage. I missed that. So it was basically, here he comes, our newest member of the Grand Ole Opry, make him welcome. But we didn't make a big deal out of it. But it was still a very special night, and it was special to have Porter do it. Yeah,
it was Bud Wendell who had the idea when he became general manager, when he quit selling insurance and worked his way up through the company, became general manager. It was his idea to have cookies and lemonade backstage.
Oh, that's nice.
And he said Grandpa Jones thought that was the greatest thing that had ever happened to the Grand Ole Opry, that you had something to snack on back in the green room,
right,
if you will.
So good.
Well, John, from Versailles, Kentucky to the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, and such a huge part in this 96-year history of the Opry and the 5,000th broadcast.
Tomorrow's going to be a great night. I just feel it.
You got a highway named after you?
I know.
Which in reality is a what?
It's a little bypass going around Versailles, but connecting if you're going from Lexington to Frankfurt or vice versa. And I've threatened at the end of my career to put a toll booth on each end of it. And my manager, who is also from Versailles, Dave Roberts, he'll get in one end of it, and I'll get in the booth in the other end, and we'll collect money.
I love that it's the fastest way out of Versailles, too.
Exactly.
It's all the way around the city.
Right. You can tell by his wardrobe, rocking the success of the Kentucky Wildcats football team these days.
Amen.
As Georgia rapidly approaches. Let's take you back to last night at Opry Country Classics and John Conlee.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Bill Cody in the morning.
Oh, my goodness.
Trying to get my bandana.
You get it
correctly.
ready.
How did you do that? Am I getting close?
You're getting close.
Yes. Let me square
We
that
are
up.
on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry this morning. Miss Jeannie Seely is here, and she comes bearing gifts.
Yes, she does.
Yeah. Look at that.
I was very upset I hadn't received mine yet. She said she wanted to grandstand and make it happen at the appropriate time. So here we are on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. And just a little bit ago, the countdown monitor had 1 day, 1 hour. Let's see, 1 hour. No, 1 day, 11 hours, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds.
It was all ones.
all ones for a second. But there was something about
Well,
that. Make a wish.
Yes, 11:11. Make a
Okay.
wish. That's exactly right.
Thank you for
I made
that.
a wish and it came true. Jeannie Seely popped in just like that. Boom. She is just the genie in the bottle. Hi.
And let me just say how happy I am you're here.
I'm so
You
happy
should
to
have
see
been
you.
here a long time ago. I'm so happy.
And
I'm
that's
so
why I wanted
love
that,
this
and we
girl.
just couldn't make it happen, could we, Kelly? We talked about working together literally for 20-plus years.
We were ships in the night,
Yeah.
just, in different places. But timing is everything. You know all about that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And let me just say what an honor it is for me to still be here for the 5,000th consecutive performance of the Opry.
Well-
I will tell you this, too. There were some years it was hard for us to make it.
Really?
And back in,
And
you know.
why was that, Jeannie?
Because remember, we had to make so many performances.
You had to make appearances. You had to
Yeah.
be here, play so many shows a year.
Right.
Okay.
Like half of the year
Yeah.
at one point. Yeah. I can remember one time, real quick, I'll tell this story. You didn't ask me to tell a story.
No,
You
we
That's
got
why
time.
we got you here. We
Time
want
we
you.
got.
Take
we
it.
came roaring in here that was when we had a Sunday matinee. Come pulling in on the bus from Texas after working out there. No time to go anywhere. Come in and freshen up to go on. Mr. Acuff met me at the back door, and he said, "Rough trip last night, Miss Jeannie?" And I said, "Yeah, it kind of was." And he said, "Well, we appreciate you being here, and they appreciate you being here." So, I mean, that said it all to me.
Yeah.
Just brush your hair and put on something and go do it. you
And
know?
when did that change, the mandatory number of appearances?
I don't know exactly when that happened.
And
but,
it was just to make life easier for you. I got to believe that you were going to be here on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But not to have to meet a quota.
I think because the business itself changed. And as you know, the Opry has always changed with how the industry changed.
Well, sure.
And that's why we're still here. But when that became less of an issue, and we had more people to fill the places. Just so the main thing was always that the Opry always had the talent to put on the show that people expected. And once we had more, the industry grew, we had more talent supply. I think that demand that you had to be here diminished a little, is the way I look at it. That's the way I prefer to look at it instead of saying we don't need you anymore.
September 16th, 1967.
Yes.
The day that you were inducted into the Grand
You
Ole
know
Opry.
what I wish I'd have looked up is what number that was.
Oh.
Well,
which
you realize if you take
consecutive-
Bill Anderson, you, and John Conlee, that's 154 years of Opry membership. And Bill was saying he had figured there were, in his 60 years, that amounted to something like 3,000 shows. And he said, I know I played at least 1,000 of them. I have no way to do it. I'm sure we could figure that out, go back and look. But,
Right.
I mean, those are extraordinary numbers, milestone numbers, Jeannie Seely.
It is amazing. One night we were here, one of the young artists was here celebrating their 50th night or performance, whatever. And they said, well, how many performances have you made? And I said, I don't know. So Amy Graham went to the computer at that time, and she came back, it was 2,600 and something. And then we all laughed, and then she said, but you were a member for 30 years before we had computers. I'm not sure how that makes me feel.
So that little girl from Pennsylvania who made her way to the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, you took a circuitous route. You went to the West Coast first.
Right. Well, that's kind of the way my well-planned life is played. I couldn't read a map, for one thing. No, actually, when I left home in Pennsylvania and went to Southern California, it wasn't following show business. It was to get out of the Northeast winters. Because I had a little MGA Roadster. And I buried it in a snowdrift on Easter morning and said, no, we'll go somewhere else. So I went to California. But that's where I started professionally writing songs and performing and realizing that with a lot of hard work and being at the right place at the right time, maybe you could have a career in this.
You know, so. I just want to say, and we're seeing some amazing pictures of you now on the screen on Circle for everybody that's watching. I want to say thank you, and I know you maybe know it now, but at the time, you were breaking down barriers and you were opening doors for female artists to come in after you. I know that you have friends, like our friend Carly Pierce loves you and calls you a mentor so much. What does that mean to you to look at all of the people, including myself, that I wouldn't probably have the opportunities that I have if you hadn't been here first, Jeannie?
It's wonderful to hear, Kelly, especially. It makes me feel wonderful. And I would be lying if I'd said that I didn't think about that along the way. Because I did. I have always thought, this isn't right, or this doesn't seem fair. And my thought always was somebody has to say something. I remember Dottie West when I did the old Teddy Bart show and said that I didn't like the way the female artists were introduced. Dottie called me immediately after and said, Jeannie, I'm afraid they're not going to introduce you at all.
Right.
But I said, somebody has to say something, Dottie. It's got to change. And she said, well, it never will in our lifetime. And sadly, it didn't in Dottie's lifetime. Except that when she got to Vegas. But I still saw the unfairness out there, even at that level.
Yeah, you made a big difference. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
So you had Don't Touch Me and a Grammy Award before you got to the Opry, or kind of simultaneously? When we talked about your actual induction, which John Conlee pointed out was not as big a deal back in those days as it is now. We didn't have these huge celebrations.
No, It's like, well, she's here now. That was it. As Don't Touch Me was climbing the charts, and I was out on the road with Porter Wagner. Porter gave me my first road job a month after I got here, and I've always been grateful for that. But I was out on the road, and they were calling and telling me where my record moved up the charts. And I'd say, that's great, but has Mr. Devine called yet?
Art Devine.
Art Devine, manager of the Opry. Yeah. I wanted a hit record, but I also wanted to be a part. And I say it all the time. It wasn't just performing on this stage that I wanted, although I wanted that. I wanted to be a part of this family. Yeah. And when I speak in the Circle Room, I point that out all the time, that this is a huge family, not just the artist when we say that. We say everybody here, from hostesses, security, office staff, everybody here. It takes all of this family to put on this show and to welcome people here and make them happy they came and make them want to come back.
And didn't Jean Shepherd play an influential role in you wanting to be a part of this family and seeing her back in Pennsylvania as a little girl?
Yes. It's so odd because I was 12, maybe 13, and I went to see Jean Shepherd and Hawkshaw Hawkins at this park, and I had 50 cents that I'd saved and bought a picture of Jean. And as I just knew everything I was going to say to her when I got up there. And when I got up there, I just looked at her, and I couldn't say a word. And finally, that little chuckle of Jean's, and she said, "Did you want me to sign that?" And I gave her the intelligent answer.
Just the head nod.
On radio, by the way, she's shaking her head.
Yes.
The head nod.
And so anyway, years later, Jean told me she remembered me. And she said, "You will know now when you meet a young girl, you will know if she wants to be an entertainer. You can just tell." And boy, you sure can, because they look at you differently.
Well, you are the consummate entertainer, I tell you that. Nobody works harder at her craft than this lady, Jeannie
Bill,
Seely.
you're wonderful.
Our guest this morning on Coffee, Country, and Cody with Kelly Sutton as we gear up for 5,000 Saturday night broadcasts just hours away here on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. Of course, we've got a Friday night show tonight, and we're going to take you back to an Opry performance of Jeannie Seely doing, if you could call it that, right here at WSM at Circle Television.
I wake up every morning, pour my coffee, gather my things, jump right in that same old traffic. Welcome to my routine. And then at work I hear a voice, "How you doing?" Someone asks. I just go on living, if you can call it that.
Well, good morning from the most famous stage in country music history for 96 years, WSM Radio and the Grand Ole Opry. Tomorrow night we mark 5,000 consecutive broadcasts of the show that made country music famous. Here we are with a guy who spent 60 years as a member of the Grand Ole Opry. Whisperin' Bill Anderson, or as we affectionately refer to him sometimes before the curtain goes up, Whistling Bill Andrews is here.
The poor old boy himself.
The poor old boy himself, yes. Thank you, Lester Moran and the Cadillac Cowboys, wherever they are. And Bill, along with Jeannie Seely and John Conlee, who've joined us this morning, Kelly Sutton, over 150 years of Opry membership in those three people combined.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. And congratulations on 60 years. We were here for that celebration. Your cake was delicious, by the way.
I made it myself.
Yeah, I bet you did. I went over and I was taking a picture of your cake right before you came in, and I was holding the camera up. It was quite large, and I thought, I don't want to drop my camera in the middle of Bill Anderson's 60th anniversary cake. That is not the way that I want to be known.
Hey, you want to be a part of Opry history or not? Do what it takes.
Right, absolutely. In all of those years, I mean, there's so many stories. You could tell us any of them, and we would just be enthralled to hear them.
You'd believe whatever I told you.
I would believe whatever you told me.
Well, that goes back to July 15th, 1961.
Oh, my
so
goodness.
this past summer.
I was 4 years old at the time.
Right.
Fresh
You
off-
didn't know a word about my jacket.
Well, I was going to get to that. It's
No.
kind of hard to miss what's going on. I told you not to put it on. I was pulling you out of the bullpen to pitch in relief here in a minute.
Well, I'm left-handed. They've been running all these left-handed pitchers out there, so maybe I'd fit right in.
You've got it going on.
I've been a Braves fan for so long. You know, I grew up in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I've known people in the Braves organization and had friends down there for so long. And we finally got back to the World Series. I just had to wear my jacket. And by the way, you
Yes.
haven't asked me. But,
Pull out the hat.
You do know who the number one college football team in America is, don't you?
I live with a Georgia fan, so yes, I do.
And there's more.
The Georgia Bulldogs.
Right.
But then this is the real important hat. This is the the hat that I'm wearing today.
Well, for
I'm
Charlie
so excited
Matos,
about this weekend.
Charlie back at the studio this morning. Charlie can appreciate this. You remind me of the NASCAR photo session that takes place in the the checkered
on.
winner's circle where they go from one cap to the next.
Right.
Somebody's standing there,
Right.
handed it
Passing
to
it
them.
off.
They got to get this sponsor in, this sponsor in. But that looks good on you, Bill Anderson.
Sure
Well,
does.
I'm awfully proud to be able to wear the Opry hat and to say that I've been here for as long as I have. And boy, this is going to be an exciting weekend.
Can you remember the first time of stepping on this stage? I would love to hear what was going through your mind.
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't this stage, but the Opry stage, because the Opry was at the Ryman the first time I ever stepped on the stage. It's an interesting story because the first time I ever walked out on the Opry stage, I wasn't carrying a guitar. I was carrying a camera. And the reason that I was there was WSM used to host a disc jockey from out around the country every weekend. They called him Mr. DJ USA. And they would have a disc jockey come in, and they would wine and dine and introduce them to the audience on the Friday Night Opry. Well, one of my best buddies from down in Georgia, who worked on a little station near the station where I worked, was selected to be Mr. DJ USA, and he begged me to come to Nashville with him, so I did. And they were getting ready to introduce him to the audience, and he had brought a camera, and he handed me a camera. He says, "Take my picture. I'll never be on this stage again. Take my picture." And so I took the camera, and I started to walk out on the stage, and I became terrified. I can't walk out on the Opry stage with a camera. I can't. And Grant Turner, bless his heart and rest his soul, the great Opry announcer, Grant says, "Get out there." And he pushed me out there, and I was on the Opry stage taking a picture of my buddy the first time that I was ever on the Opry stage, never dreaming that within a couple of years I would be performing out there.
And you and Grant are both in the Hall of Fame. He was the first disc jockey to ever go into the Country Music Hall
As he
of Fame.
should have been.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at that. These pictures that we're showing right now on Circle TV are
Now, that's
absolutely
when I was
incredible.
Mr. DJ USA. That was a couple of years later.
So for people who are listening on radio and not seeing this, and for those on Circle Television, who do we see in that picture, Bill? Can you
Well,
see
of
it?
course, I'm sitting down there at the WSM microphone. Hawkshaw Hawkins, my goodness, he was tall, wasn't he? And that hat made him look taller. And Jane Shepherd, Stonewall Jackson, and Marty Robbins. They all came in to be guests on my show. I remember when Marty came to the microphone, I couldn't shut him up. You know, when Marty was on, he was on. And I thought, how am I going to get out of this?
So was that at WSMV Channel 4 here in Nashville, or was that at National Life, that studio? Do you recall?
Oh, that was National Life.
Yeah.
That was in the old National Life
Okay.
building downtown. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, that's where TPAC is today. There's a plaque there that tells you what once stood here, which was the National Life and Accident Insurance Company building, the parent company. That what they wanted to do with this thing was sell some insurance on a Saturday night to people listening across America.
That's how it all started.
Yeah.
WSM, We Shield Millions. That was the insurance thing.
Well,
Can you imagine an insurance salesman going up to somebody's door and just knocking and saying, "Hi, I'm from the Grand Ole Opry. Well, come in."
Bud Wendell, who worked his way up from a salesman selling those penny policies, Bud Wendell says it was immediate entry. Once the Opry, from the time it started with Uncle Jimmy Thompson and the solemn old judge, Judge Hay, to the barn dance, to the name Opry in 27. He said, when you walked up and knocked on that door and said, "I'm with National Life Accident Insurance Company and Grand Ole Opry," you, number one, you were guaranteed a sale. Number two, you were guaranteed a meal. And he said that's just the way people receive. That's how much a part of the lives of people, particularly agricultural America, this
You mean
show
if I go up
was.
to somebody's door now and knock on the door and say, "I'm from the Grand Ole Opry," they'll feed me?
I will. Come on over. Anytime. You're
No,
welcome
no,
like a
anytime.
racket.
But with their security cameras, you'll go viral.
Yes,
I do
you
know
will.
that.
Yes, you will. You know, it was funny. Jeannie was just here, and she was just talking about how this is such a huge family. Not only all of the Opry members, but the stage crew, the band, everybody that's a part of it. And you are really such an integral part of that. You're the head of the family.
You know, thank you. You know what I tell them many nights when I come out, and especially if I'm opening the show, I will say, for those of you that have never been here before, this is not so much a concert or a performance as it is a family reunion. And I said, we're part of the family, and you're here, and you're part of the family. So we're not going to sing at you. We're going to visit with you. and we're going to have a good time together, because it is a family and they become part of it. And I think being able to make them feel a part of it for all of these years has contributed very much to its success.
Well, many people listening will know the story, but if you would share the story of your first performance and your debut, and then that July night when you became a member, and the different stars that were a part of that you remember.
Well, the first time I was on was in January of 1959. I had written City Lights, and it had become the #1 record in 1958. And I had just signed a recording contract with Decca Records, had my first record out, a song called That's What It's Like to Be Lonesome. And I came to Nashville from Commerce, Georgia, where I was working as a disc jockey, and performed on the Opry. Porter Wagner introduced me. They put me on in the middle of the night. I think it was 10:45.
It's a
After
prime
everybody
slot.
had gone to bed. But evidently it went well enough that Jack Stout, who was the program director at that time, he came up to me after the show and he said, I want you back in the spring to do the Prince Albert show, which was the network portion of the Opry. And that was the biggest thing that the Opry had. That was in the days before we were on television and all that thing. So I came back in April and was on the Prince Albert show, and that was in 1959. And then in July of 61, 2 years later, they asked me to become a member of the family.
Well, there you are, your adoring fans. I don't know where that was taken or when that was taken. But look at that pompadour, buddy. You had a little dabadoo in there, didn't you?
I love the pomade. Love the look. You know, and seeing the changes that have happened in so many years, Bill, what are some of the things that you remember that stick out to you and you think, my goodness, I'm so happy that this has changed and that we're in the time that we're in with the Opry?
Oh, my goodness. Well, of course, just the Opry House, you know, and being able to have our own parking places out back. We used to have to get down to Nashville in town when the show was at the Ryman, and we had to try to find a garage that had a parking place in it. And I know some nights I was parking, 3 and 4 blocks away and lugging a guitar and a costume and all this stuff, into the Ryman. So when we came out here and it changed to where we had our own parking places and really nice dressing rooms, because the dressing room situation at the Ryman was, we'd all just kind of pile into one room.
Well, the guys had one and the girls had 2 dressing rooms, right?
Well, the girls had the ladies' restroom
and a dressing
one
room.
other dressing room.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember many nights me and my band would be in a room with Hank Snow and the Rainbow Ranch Boys and Ernest Tubb and the Texas Troubadours, and there wasn't room to change your mind in there, let alone change your clothes.
1936. Funny you would mention Hank Snow. He auditioned and as a result signed with RCA Victor, as it was known in those days, where he stayed for 45 years and, of course, membership in the Grand Ole Opry along the way. He recorded 140 albums and had more than 85 singles. Interesting you would mention one of the greats, Hall of Famers, from the Grand Ole Opry.
He was a big influence on me growing up. I loved Hank Williams. I was a big Hank Williams fan. But Hank Snow brought something to the music that nobody else was really doing much in those days to any great degree. He brought those up-tempo songs, the I'm Moving Ons and the Golden Rockets and the Rumble Boogies and all. So I could listen to Hank Williams sing Cold, Cold Heart and Your Cheating Heart and cry, and then listen to Hank do the Golden Rocket. And it was a real contrast. And I was influenced by both of them tremendously.
Funny you would mention Hank Snow and then Hank Williams. On this date in 1952, Hank Williams was #1 with Jambalaya, which spent 14 weeks at #1.
Goodness gracious. I was listening to the Opry the night that Hank Williams sang Jambalaya for the first time, and I'll never, ever forget what he said. He said, here's a little song that has never been aired before, and it probably needs airing out. And he sang Jambalaya. Yeah.
With the Drifting Cowboy Band.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
That is Country Music Hall of Famer, Grand Ole Opry star, and as I say in introducing him at the Opry, Kelly, on any given night, an American music icon, Bill Anderson. Thank you
so
for coming.
kind.
I mean every word of it, buddy.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Kelly, it's good to see you. You sure make this place look better.
Well, I love you for saying it. The only thing would be better is if I had this Georgia hat on.
Yeah.
So I'll put it on. There we go.
Yeah, between the two of them, you're going to have a wild weekend is what you're going to have.
Bill Anderson and his Po Folks Band.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening. Let me add my welcome to all the others you've received tonight. Are y'all having a good time? Oh, nothing like a Tuesday night Grand Ole Opry.
Coffee, Country, and Cody on WSM.
As we welcome to this historic stage, closing in just, well, let's see, 1 day, 9 hours, 29 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting until we celebrate 5,000 consecutive broadcasts of the Opry. And we are here with a guy who is the vice president and executive producer of the Grand Ole Opry and the pride of Xenia, Illinois, one Opry Dan Rogers.
Greetings, y'all.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you. Welcome to the Grand Ole Opry House.
Well, we've had John Conlee, Jeannie Seely, Charles Esten, and Bill Anderson as your opening act. So listen, Garth,
Not
you're
bad.
headlining right now, okay?
Mr. Brooks.
Oh, my goodness. This weekend is going to be absolutely tremendous. I want to talk to you about the planning stages of this. When did you start the whole planning for the 5,000th celebration?
I think, honestly, in some folks' heads, it probably started. I remember I was sitting up there, and I don't know why I was sitting up there that night, but I went to watch part of the show, the 4,000th show. And in that show, we honored Miss Minnie Pearl, and I remember Vince and Amy being on that night, and I'm sure that in my head I was thinking, I wonder if I'll be around here for that 5,000th show, and who will be and what that'll be like. But it really started in earnest after we had those first few weeks of those pandemic shows. You know, we were thinking, okay, we have to get through this, and we have to do these shows week to week to week, but we also need to be thinking about, depending upon what the world's like on October 30th, 2021, what we want that night to be like.
It happens to be, for you and Bill Anderson, your birthday weekend.
Yeah, baby.
You're a Halloween baby on Sunday, and he is a November 1st baby on Monday.
It's true. And as I said earlier, I once on the Opry stage looked at him and suggested we party straight through my birthday into his, and he looked at me like that might be the last thing on earth he wanted to do.
Maybe
It was
once
like
upon a time.
It was like I'd given him a really, really, really bad song idea.
I mentioned your hometown, your little tiny hometown there in Xenia, Illinois, but that is, for you, that's the cradle of country music, and where your love of all things country music, and this place we know as home, the Grand Ole Opry, began, wasn't it, Dan?
It was indeed, and I think that that this weekend is probably just going to be really particularly emotional for a lot of us. Just like getting through this past 20 months and working through it all together. And there were, when you were asking about planning, Kelly, I know there were times, I'm sure, that we were all talking, and in the back of my head I was thinking, is this all for naught? Like, are we going to have an audience that night? Will we be back to 3 people on bar stools? So the fact that we're going to be able to have not everything we would have planned pre-pandemic, but a lot of really great moments in the show, and a show that will be seen around the world, really is something to celebrate. And yes, I grew up, someone was asking yesterday my first memory of the Opry, and I said it was before things I remember. I do remember sitting about right there when the first time I came to the Opry was I was in kindergarten, and we came on Christmas break, I guess just a few days after Christmas, around it actually would have been New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. We came to the Opry for the first time.
And who was on stage? Tell everybody who was on stage.
The person I remember, the one moment I remember from that show, I remember my dad telling me, we're going to go to the Grand Ole Opry, and probably you need to sit and watch and not fall asleep. But I remember someone, probably Porter, just making the biggest introduction ever of Dolly Parton, and she came out in a green from head to toe, and the crowd went crazy. And I don't even really remember her singing. I just remember like her taking the stage, which what 4 or 5-year-old good Midwestern boy wouldn't remember that.
Now,
right?
there is a picture of you, I think, when you became vice president, general manager, vice president, executive producer of the Opry, that Gina Keltner, who's the talent coordinator here at the Opry, posted of you as a little guy standing in front of a WSM mic flag, Opry mic flag on stage. Where was that?
It was in that circle.
Was it in it?
Yeah, I think we must have.
I wasn't sure if it was at the Ryman or here.
It was here, and I think that we must have taken. I can barely remember taking a backstage tour. I think maybe the next day we got up and came here and must have taken a tour. I remember that probably because of the photo, and I remember either like my standing on my dad's shoulders or on my dad's back and acting like I was announcing into the into the podium, as all, again, 5-year-old country music Midwestern fans would do. We stayed at the KOA campground that night, by the way. Shout out to the KOA folks.
Still there, still nice.
Well, as you know, Rebecca and I honeymooned here. We stayed at the Love Shack the day's end on Voltee Boulevard at Briley Parkway.
Wow.
For people
Very
who
nice.
had money.
Okay.
It's no KOA, but
Big spender. You came here, the phrase is, I got here as fast as I could. You came here and started in 1998, is that right?
I started as an intern in a building that is no longer here. So
The Pearl building.
another one that is no longer here.
Yeah. To watch all of the milestones and to see all of the things, I mean, it is particularly interesting that you've been side stage and you've seen all of this happen leading up to the 5,000th. Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite memories that you have in working here?
Well, I think anytime you see someone's dream come true, whatever that dream is always makes such an impact. When someone has worked toward their debut, whether they've been in town 2 months or whether they've been at it for 50 years, is always amazing. And then, of course, when someone is invited to join the Opry and it truly is a surprise and truly meaningful to them.
Like Mandy
awesome.
Barnett.
That was just great.
Yeah.
She's played the Opry either 519 or 520 times. And I give Gina Keltner credit for saying, I've got the date. Her birthday is September 28th. And I said, there we go. And now we just have to see if Connie Smith is available. And we were off and running. And that was awesome. I will say that
Look at Connie. For those of you on Circle Television, you can see it, but on radio, Connie is like shouting the Hallelujah chorus, and Mandy is just overcome with emotion. And Mike Noble is back there trying not to cry on guitar. That is a great shot.
I love that shot because I really feel like part of that is jubilation on Connie's part, and part of it is relief that she got through it. Because I was talking to Marty Stewart like a week later, what have you, and he said, we listened. They were out west, I think. He said, we listened. He goes, I knew she was going to cry. I knew that Connie couldn't get through that. And that's what makes it so absolutely wonderful, too.
And the fact that you get to orchestrate all of these little mini surprises and incredible opportunities for people, that is so special.
It is not lost on me how incredibly special it is. And also would say I've really thought a lot in the past few days about, I think it's just because we've done a lot of interviews about the show, but how we all are on the shoulders of the people that came before us, and all of us are, the staff folks, WSM folks, the artists, every artist who comes here really learned about the Opry from somebody and grew to love it from somebody. And even the fans, like on social media, I've seen all these folks saying they're excited about flying in today, and people are truly coming from across the country, and all those folks learned about the Opry from someone and owe their love of this place to somebody. So it has been the honor of honors for sure.
I'm thinking about Roy Acuff at a time like this, when you mentioned standing on the shoulders of those who've gone before with his arms folded, standing side, saying, yes, quite possibly, Dan, you are right.
Well, if I could get a thumbs up from Roy Acuff, that'd be awesome.
Boy, a lot of people have said that. I am the person who dubbed Dan Rogers, Opry. Dan, we used to do a radio segment together when he first started in marketing, and he would call in, promote the Opry for the coming weekend and the lineup. And just the first time we ever did it, I just referenced him as Opry Dan Rogers, and it stuck.
Best
and I have
nickname
not gotten
ever.
1 penny of the merchandising from that. Not one dime has
Not
come my
one
way
dime.
since.
Maybe we need merchandising. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's been the problem.
Well, you need to talk to Bill Anderson. He had all the hats.
Yes, he
was
did.
doing all the merch today.
I'm afraid those would show up at the employee sale at the end of the year.
Well, Dan, tomorrow night there are 2 shows. Sold out, but of course, Circle Television, the TV home of the Opry now, will have that first show, which starts at, of course, at 7 o'clock Central Time, so 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Circle. And wherever you find Circle, you will find the Opry in real time with Bill Anderson, Connie Smith, the Gatlin brothers, who were here just right here on this stage with Larry hosting Opry Country Classics last night, Terry Clark, Darius Rucker, Chris Jansen, Dustin Lynch, Jeannie Seely, the Isaacs, who... Are they the newest members before Mandy?
Until next Tuesday.
Yeah. And, of course, we got
Garth
Chris,
and Trisha.
Yeah, Garth and Chris Young, Vince Gill, Garth Brooks, and Trisha Yearwood, which is where we're headed here in just a second. But Garth and Trisha have been particularly involved in the life of the Grand Ole Opry. In the present, they welcome people to the Opry who will go to the Circle Room as a part of their introduction and induction to all things Opry on a given show night, right, Dan?
That really amazing video. If you haven't been able to take a backstage tour, daytime backstage tour lately, it's one of the things I'm most proud of the past 5 years or so. They do just an amazing job of kind of laying their hearts out there about what the Opry means to them.
And Opry Dan, thank you, pal.
Can't thank you all enough. It's going to be a great weekend.
Love you, boy.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our program director at WSM Radio is J. Patrick Tittle. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director is Amanda Cannon. And I'm Charlie Matos. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help new people find the show.